Hey everybody, welcome to October Tradition 10. We're here with the Seattle group who is hosting the tradition study on behalf of the Third Legacy Committee here at Seattle Linen Group. So I will turn it over to Stephen.
Well, thank you, Lara. So it's 10th tradition tonight, 10th fourth Monday of the month that we've been meeting. And I appreciate all the people that are here. And our format traditionally is we have 3 10-minute speakers, and then anybody else that wants to say anything or maybe some question and answers. And with the crowd that we've got both on Zoom and here physically tonight, it doesn't look like we'll get to everybody, but we'll try. And we're pretty loose in format. And again, appreciate everybody that showed up. And Abby's going to start us off tonight. And so, Abby, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Abby. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey Abby.
Thank you, Lara, for asking me to share about the 10th tradition. I think first I'll just read the long form of Tradition 10. I'll try not to read too much of the stuff I've been researching, but we'll see. So the long form of Tradition 10. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views whatever. And I love this tradition. I absolutely love it. I think it is just miraculous, really. You know how well, because I've got a lot of opinions, and I know a lot of other alcoholics that have a lot of opinions. But those opinions they don't belong when it's going to affect AA as a whole. I think of that, kind of in my home group. I guess I'll just give an example. So what are we doing? Like our primary purpose is to carry the message to the still suffering alcoholic. I used to have to drink. I don't have to drink anymore. This is how. And so our group, we read AA approved literature. Is just one thing that kind of came up in my home group recently. We don't read outside literature. And so just not a member of the home group, but someone attending the meeting read during their share a bit of religious literature, not AA approved. And I'm just looking around like, is anyone gonna say anything? Like whose job is like what's happening? Whose job is this? This isn't right. I just had that feeling. But so I did nothing. Just took some deep breaths and asked my, like, I guess elder statesman home group member, like, hey, is that appropriate? Is that following our tradition, our 10th tradition, specifically opinions on outside issues, religion being, one of them. AA is a spiritual program, not a religious one. We don't endorse any particular faith or sect. And there's like, no, it's okay. You can go talk to that person and say, actually, we don't read non-approved AA literature at this meeting. And so I did. And, gently and gracefully, and like, I hope. And he was receptive to that. Understood. Understood. Because why though? Because it's just so important. I don't want people to come in to the meeting brand new, and think, what in the world is this? What is this a religious group? Because it's not. That's not what AA is today. well, there was one example of like, oh, we can't have these opinions when it affects the group as a whole, because it's gonna, one, maybe affect the newcomer, confuse them, keep them out. Another example, or maybe I'll just read a little something more, just so just talking nonsense. So this was from the Experience Has Taught Us an Introduction to Our 12 Traditions, approved pamphlet. Steering clear of outside issues allows us to focus on what we do best. Controversy seems to be a habit for some of us. Yet experience has shown that when speaking as AA members, it's best not to take a position on outside issues. By not endorsing or opposing anyone or anything, we're free to concentrate on helping drunks get and stay sober. That's from. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. You know, I want to, that's what I'm qualified to do, I think, with my experience with alcoholism, my experience with the 12 steps, you know, is to help each other get and stay sober. That's it. And let's see, another example of a maybe outside issue. I kind of came into this meeting at like the end of the pandemic, and there was some controversy about mask wearing at the meeting, and like so an outside issue being, you know, opinions on outside opinions on masking, healthcare, vaccination, all that stuff that maybe we didn't have to deal with before. Well, I wasn't a part of it, but what I know is the meeting, people in the meeting had very strong differing opinions, and the meeting no longer exists today. So the outside opinions of you need to do this or this isn't right, you know, the meeting dissolved because of that. And everyone, you know, everyone's okay. I think they found a different meeting to go to, but let's see, maybe I'll just briefly touch on like the history. In the traditions checklist, tradition 10, there's a question number 3, what in AA history gave rise to our 10th tradition? From doing some reading in the, 12 and 12 AA comes of age, language of the heart, and talking with my sponsor, because I forgot somehow after reading. So the tradition comes from, the Washingtonians 100 years ago, taking a strong stance on slavery and then taking a strong stance on alcohol reform and prohibition, and saying like you can't do this or you can't do that, and ultimately ended up dissolving. So it was just like a lesson that, and someone please correct me if I'm probably fumbling this up, but it was a lesson to Bill and Bob and the founders that we cannot take a strong stance on these outside issues or we will dissolve, we won't survive, because we can have such strong differing opinions. Another thing I just love about this tradition 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy, is that I have made friends that I would never have made, normally outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have like loving, lasting friendships with people who we might totally disagree on outside issues, but on one thing we can totally agree. Alcoholics Anonymous works. Was that 10 minutes?
You did great, Abby. Thank you.
Thanks. Abby.
Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Thank you.
And as is often the case, we may circle around back to you with a question or comment or a particular thank you. So Diane, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. My name's Diane. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey,
Hi,
Diane.
And Steve, thanks for asking me to share about Tradition 10. And boy, Abby covers some really great things. So I may overlap, but I'll try not to. And I love what Abby, what you had to say that, what am I qualified to talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous? I think that I wrote that in my big book, so it's here all the time, or my 12 and 12, so it's here all the time. I think that's such a great barometer of what I talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I have no opinion. AA should have no opinion on outside issues, so we don't be drawn into public controversy. And one of the things that I think Abby touched on just briefly that I want to read out of the 12 and 12 is that we, as a group, we get to talk about AA related things and reason things out. Did I freeze there?
Well, we didn't know if we did or you did.
Okay. Yeah, so within, we don't want to get into to public controversy, but we can have different opinions within the group. And he says this, Bill Wilson says this in the 12 and 12 on page 177 at the bottom. He says, hold on. He says, disliking the attempt of some to manage a group, half its members might angrily rush off to form another group more to their liking. Elders temporarily turned Pharisee might sulk. Bitter attacks have been directed against people suspected of mixed motives. Despite their din, our puny rows never did AA a particle of harm. They were just part and parcel of learning to work together and live together, which I think is like how the 12 traditions came about. How do we stay sober and stay together as a fellowship? So I like that distinction between we'd have no controversy, we don't have any we don't bring any outside issues into AA, and we can have a lot of controversy when talking about the traditions in AA and how AA, like, do I want chocolate chip cookies or do I want molasses cookies? Like that could start a whole controversy right there. But we get to reason that out. And then it says, in this respect, we do not enter into public controversy because we know that our society will perish if it does. Abby referred to that. Since recovery from alcoholism is life itself to us, it is imperative that we persevere in full strength our means of survival. So those are just some things out of the 12 and 12. I really like the checklist for tradition 10. And I do have some experience here. So the first one is, I won't read them all, just a few. Do I ever give the impression that there really is an AA opinion on antabuse, tranquilizers, doctors, psychiatrists, churches, hospitals, jails, alcohol, the federal or state government, legalizing marijuana, vitamins, Al-Anon or Alateen. And boy, I remember when marijuana was being legalized, and I don't remember ever that it came up but I know that a lot of alcoholics shared about it before the meeting and after the meeting, but not during the meeting. And I really appreciated that. There's one story, and I think this story is true. I heard it from a friend who was close friends to a woman, relatively new in sobriety. This was a different state and a different city. And, she was talking about her mental health issues. This was kind of before people started talking about mental health issues in the meeting. And she talked about her mental health issue being bipolar, and that she's on a certain medication for being bipolar. And apparently an old timer spoke up saying, something like this, alcoholics don't take medication. And she took it to heart because he was an old timer and she was a newcomer. And you know how we look up mostly to old timers when we're new. and she stopped her medication and she got into a lot of trouble. So, I think that there was time when I was just early in my sponsorship, when I may have had opinions about, I'm just trying to think. I don't know that I would ever tell somebody not to go on medication or to get off medication. But I may have kind of gotten in there with a little bit of an opinion about medication. And you know what? It's none of my business. It is none of my business. It's an outside issue. So if a person or sponsee wants to tell me that they've gone to a psychiatrist and they're taking medication, okay, good. Just follow directions from the psychiatrist. That's all I can say. If they're taking medication not prescribed, well, that might be a different issue. Okay, hold on. Then I'll just say one more of my experiences. Another city, another state, I was in my home group, and a fellow spoke up unexpectedly and loudly during his share about the current president. And this was a number of years ago. And my buddy, my AA buddy, who had been in the program a long time, like shut him down so fast, he didn't even know what was coming. I had never seen that in a meeting before, like right there, right then, shut it down. And I mean, this was, I don't know, 2006 or 7, and I still remember him doing that. So, I also like Abby's approach of, checking it out and then taking somebody aside and maybe telling them about our tradition. But this guy he was a little off anyway. So I'm so glad my buddy did that. So just a couple of other things. As people in the program, are we having opinions about our fellow smoking? Do we say, oh, he's smoking, so he's not sober? Smoking is none of my business, and it's nobody else's business except that person. Because again, we as sponsors and as people who have been around, we really can sponsor the new person. We really can influence the new person. And if something comes out of our mouth that's not AA, we do have our story. But that's not AA, and it's not even have anything to do with AA. That person can incorporate that into their program and their spiritual growth. I can't think of something right now. And then here's the other one that I keep forgetting is our clothing. Like, we have to be careful what we wear to a meeting. Are we wearing a t-shirt with our choice for president? Like, that's outside issue. And I think it's something that might be a little bit subtle, but when I see somebody with something that's controversial on their person, clothing on their person, I get squirmy. And I don't think I've ever said anything because it doesn't happen very often at all in my experience, but I get super squirmy. And just refreshing myself with this tradition, I think I am more equipped with information to be able to speak kindly in an informed way to anybody that does that. So I hope nothing there was controversial. And thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
And Mike?
Hi there. I guess I'm next. Huh? Well, thank you, Steve, for asking me to do this. It just, I'm Mike, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Mike.
It just so happens that I actually had to write something for the newsletter, and it just so happened to be on Tradition 10. So what I'd like to do is just kind of like go over it, because it fits right in here. First, thank you, Abby and Diane, for that too, because that was good. Half of the stuff is kind of like what I even had written here. And I'm just gonna read it, and then just kind of like briefly talk about it a little bit then too. I wrote down, when I read any of the traditions, I find these are experiences from the past, and because of that, it was set into action what to do and what not to do in the future, so we can continue in unity with AA's singleness of purpose, which is to help the still suffering alcoholic. The 12 and 12 book on Tradition 10 talks about the Washingtonians, which Abby brought up, who with their disastrous mistake of putting themselves in public controversy in several circumstances, gave Alcoholics Anonymous a very good idea of what not to do. I came into the halls to first stay sober using the steps. That to me is recovery. As I was doing that, I became a member with my home group, which I then learned about the traditions of unity. I still have ego, though, personal ego. I have family ego and community ego as well. Giving my opinion, which would be my ego, my family's opinion, and even my community's opinion. I can have all these opinions on religion, politics, and alcohol reform, or anything else and still be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. What I cannot do is state that Alcoholics Anonymous backs me up on any of it. I thank my higher power, which is God, that because of this tradition, I'm learning to keep my mouth shut just a little bit longer and to keep an open mind just a little bit more when someone talks about anything I am not agreeing with. And when it's my turn to talk, I try to make sure it's my opinion only. And then I kind of wrote down, I'm a Packer fan because I grew up in Wisconsin. And then I wrote, go Pack, go, just my opinion. So, I can have opinions, and I do like the way that, Diane, you brought up, because I also have certain issues when people come into the halls with certain things on their hats or jackets and stuff like that. But I try to just kind of keep that in an open mind because that's their opinion. They're not specifically saying that AA backs them up on that particular political person that's on their shirt. So I can't really say anything because it's their opinion. But now if they say AA is backing them up on that particular person, well, that's something where that is, to me, is wrong, because we need to stay away from those kind of issues where they're saying that AA is backing them up. So I don't know, that's about all I can think of on that. It is a good tradition because, like I said, we all have opinions on anything, really. It's how I grew up. I talk about that, my personal ego. I've got ego. My family, because I grew up with a family that had a certain religion, they used to say, oh, you don't want to go to the neighbors because they believe this particular way. And I had a way of growing up knowing that certain people are wrong because they don't believe the way my family believes. But when I came into AA, learning to have more of an open mind on those kind of things, that was a pure benefit for me. And as long as I'm not saying that AA's backing me up on it, I'm good with that. So there you go. Thanks for letting me share.
Well, thank you, Mike. And Abby, did I see you do a fist bump when
Yeah.
he said Packers?
Yes, you did.
Oh,
Oh.
yes. I'm a big
Both you guys
Packers
keep
fan.
coming back.
Oh,
It-
man.
It gets so much better when you get
Wonderful,
well.
Only for character development.
Yeah.
Okay. Any rate, so I'm Steve Alcoholic, and just so appreciate the three of you taking your time to come and share with us. And I got a story about that too, about the 10th tradition, that all of you touched on it. I was confused at first about, AA has no opinion on outside issues. Well, I never thought, okay, what's the difference between an inside issue and an outside issue? So I'm of course always been opinionated stuff. And so I'm just thinking, well, I guess I just don't do that tradition very well. And as time went on and I got to hear some of the elder statespeople talk, it's AA since basically day one probably has had all sorts of opinions on inside issues. How do we set up the room? Should we buy coffee and tea? Should we have a dress code? Should we write AA and tell them to we don't want to say men and women anymore, we want to say people? That only took 5 years. Lots of people had opinions. And so I got to see that the history of AA is filled with inside opinions and inside controversies, all sorts of them. Historically, very recent controversies, age-old controversies. Whether it's is an all women's meeting? Is that really AA? Is it all gay meeting? All this? All only doctors? All sorts of things that have been very controversial. But inside AA, and the tradition is talking about outside. And just for me, it was really helpful to recognize there is a difference where controversy can be. It's always been a part of AA. Go to any business meeting. It's in the long run, since AA now has a long run as opposed to the Washingtonians, it's obviously been helpful, and we've kept it inside, not outside. And when you, Dan, when you mentioned when somebody asks you a medical question, I've been asked those too, and it feels so good to have come far enough to say, well, what our book says is if you have a medical problem, and you can take them to the page in the paragraph and say, here's what you do. And the people come, well, Steve, blah, 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 all sorts of legal stuff. And you can listen and say, because we don't get involved, it's many people have found it helpful when people have legal problems to see an attorney. And that's how it was with me. And so to not have outside issues, especially today's political climate and stuff, I think it keeps AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, very attractive to the whole. Here's an organization, excuse me, that they just have no opinion on it. And yet, as we all know, coffee before the meeting or after the meeting, we have all sorts of opinions on stuff, but it's all inside. And so I think it really does bind us together. And like, I think maybe it was you, Abby, that quoted this out of the book, that then you get the opposing opinions inside AA, and what happens? We get another meeting. Now there's 2 meetings instead of 1. And that's only happened since AA started.
Yeah.
Okay, enough out of me. And maybe if it's okay, we can just go around the table here and call it good.
Okay, I'm Nancy, an alcoholic.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, and thank you all for Abby and Diane and Mike for kicking us off, and Stephen for your comments too. And I agree with you, Abby. I think it is miraculous that AA's traditions, work to preserve, the legacy, and that the insurance that AA will continue by these really basic traditions. And in the little bit of reading I did about it, I came across a line that said that AA's 10th tradition tries harder than any other fellowship to ensure that it stays within the written message. And I thought that's so cool, because if thinking about any other, like, say the Bible, interpreted, 100 different ways and 100 different religions and sects and denominations, and all thinking, this is the right interpretation, and that we stay out of that. And yeah, like, we do have these opinions, we have these opinions, but they are just that. It's just an opinion. And I love the fact that AA as a whole does not take a stance on any of that. And I think, and that is what saves us. If it comes down to a controversy in the end, it's like, well, AA does not have an opinion on that. And we all can learn from that, so much, just in a personal perspective in life, about, what's my opinion worth. It's like, well, how they used to say that, and 10 cents would get you a cup of coffee. Now it's like more like that, and $4.70 will get you a cup of coffee. That, in my opinion. But so I guess I just wanted to thank you all for what you shared. And so thank you. I pass.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Nancy.
I'm Cindy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Cindy.
And thanks you guys for sharing for so long about Tradition 10. I got so much out of it, because a lot of the situations that you brought up, I had not thought of before. So thank you. And that's what I love about this tradition study, is I'm learning the depth of this organization. And it's something that's been brought to my attention and like risen to the top this week has been that we're all here for the still suffering alcoholic. And that this continues is another way to focus our attention on that, by not getting distracted about outside issues. And a lot of the traditions deal with that. It's not, Tradition 10 deals with the outside issues, but the other ones deal with getting involved in like hospital. What is that one, you guys?
H&I?
Each group should be autonomous of
Oh.
affecting groups. AA is a whole, wait a minute. Where Alcoholics Anonymous did not get involved in treatment and hospitals and organization like that, so they could keep their primary focus. And just even the organization of meetings, I get distracted by who's gonna do what in the meeting, and what we're really here for is the alcoholic who still suffers. Pass.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy. Steve, alcoholic,
Steve.
and kind of what you said, Steve, is where I was going as far as, no opinion on outside issues. Well, we got enough inside issues to deal with. And my example, as this seems like a night of examples, there was a meeting that we had years ago at our home group, and somebody was in there, and he'd been in the program for a long time, but his wife was going to Al-Anon, and he didn't like that, and he was in there bad mouthing Al-Anon. And one of the other members, who was quite a bit more sober than I was, boy, he shared second after this guy, and he really laid it out as, that is just your opinion. And your opinion does not need to be shared in a meeting like this. And, you know, he was very elegant, but stern, you know, and he made the point that, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, is alcoholics in a room. Nobody has all the information. We just have some thoughts or guesses or opinions, however you want to call them, of how things can and should be. But if we know anything in Alcoholics Anonymous, we know that what we think it might be will be something totally different when it all works out. And I just, you know, being open to the message, not being swayed by an opinion, trying to find the facts, you know, with a group conscience, so we know that we're safe within as alcoholics as a whole. Seems like that should be our primary purpose to Tradition 10. So I just I feel like it's yes, there's a lot of outside issues to deal with, probably more outside issues than, you know, if you go back to 1940s, you know, we had issues back then, you know, and you know what? There was some in 50s and 60s and 70s. And as alcoholics, why wouldn't there be issues? So I appreciate the fact that we have a, I'm going to say that it's divine direction. And that's why that's why these traditions help show us the way to keep our groups safe, keep Alcoholics Anonymous safe as a whole, so we can all recover. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Lara.
Is that how you did it?
My name's Lara, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Lara.
Hi, Lara.
I do really like this. I do really like this one sentence in the first paragraph of the 12 and 12. Practically never have I heard a heated religious, political, or reform argument among AA members. So long as we don't argue these matters privately, it's a cinch we never shall publicly. And I like that. It reminds me, you know, I don't know about you guys, but when I engage in things that I think I feel like I'm right about, it's just such a exhausting ego trip that it just really has no place in my, and I've spent so much time doing it. I mean, because I am right about so many things. And that I'm getting to a place in my life where I just really am not interested. I really just would rather, you know, be joined together with my fellow AA members in brotherly and harmonious action in our primary purpose of helping the still suffering alcoholic. You know, I do have my latest inventory was about, you know, a lot of the things on my resentment list and a lot of the things on my, consequently on my amends list are principles and institutions. And so I'm in the process of trying to make amends for these resentments that I have towards some of these political and governmental institutions. And the way that I'm doing that is by getting involved on a civic level. And that's okay. But I really need to be careful that I don't talk about that stuff in AA, or even in front of the church or in front of the intergroup office or inside the intergroup office. Nobody needs to know about that. I don't need to share that with anybody. Even if people in here are talking about all their wrong opinions about stuff, right? Like I just, it's a real exercise for me to not engage. And I've been fairly successful during COVID as working down here. Things, you know, sometimes it the outside world by necessity came into this office, came into Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And it was a very stressful period of time for me because I felt like the sacredness of Alcoholics Anonymous was being forced to deal with an outside issue. And it was difficult. It was difficult for a lot of our meetings. And it was difficult for people at this office making policies. And it was a difficult time for a lot of people. And but we, rallied, and we are here, and nevertheless, we persevered. And although we are forever changed, it was a great lesson. It was a great lesson to me, and continues to be a great lesson to me, that I do not need to share my opinion. Unsolicited advice is really, really best to be left alone to somebody more qualified. I remember when I first got sober, I chaired a meeting. I don't know, I must have had like 60 days sober, 6 months sober, very early. And I was doing a lot of other 12-step programs when I first got sober, because I needed them all and wanted to do all of them. And the other ones had good literature. So I was chairing an AA meeting at my home group, and opened up a daily reader from another 12-step program, and firmly got shut down by an old timer. But then even within that meeting, people were, arguing about whether or not I could read outside literature. And but I will always appreciate that old timer for telling me. I had no idea. I didn't even know what conference approved literature was. I was 6 months sober. So I appreciate now more than I did then, the old timer telling me and educating me. And I think I've said it before, I'll say it again. That is our job as people, keepers of the traditions, so that we can make sure that Alcoholics Anonymous survives and is here for the alcoholic that's not yet born, right? So studying the traditions is super important, and I'm glad we're doing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Well, thank you, Lara. And Abby, you're the one who brought up first the whole COVID deal, and what a great, and Lara just talked about it, and what a period in time to look at Tradition 10. How do we not have an opinion? And I'm sure all of us that were involved in meetings at the time of COVID, does the government have a right to tell us this, or somebody else's opinion? Do they have an obligation to tell us this? Who can make us wear a mask? How can they say that we should write down everybody's email address that was here at this particular, just on and on and on. And what a time to really get to see different parts of how Tradition 10 can be looked at. And it was in a way kind of an exciting time. But I was thinking, when they wrote these traditions, I wonder if they wrote this 10th tradition kind of like as a joke to us, because we have so much inside opinions and controversies that maybe there is no time for outside if we really paid attention to what we're doing.
Yeah.
That was just a thought. So, any other comments or? Abby's got her non-packer. Oh.
Don't talk about that. I think just on the traditions checklist, number 5, do I breach this or any of its supporting traditions in subtle, perhaps unconscious ways? It was just a helpful question to think about. And, I'll continue to be more mindful about that. My last meeting with my sponsor, we talked about what is the conversation like before the meeting starts and after the meeting is over, because those are also very important times. I am also kind of, I'm not representing AA, but you know, in a way, who's listening? Is that new person standing out there, you know, listening to what we're chatting about? And am I being cognizant and mindful of that, of carrying these traditions with me? I mean, throughout my day, really, not just before and after the meeting, everywhere I go. So I'm grateful for, you know, I'm grateful for you guys and for the traditions, and thank you. That's it.
Well, thank you, Abby, and I'll let you guys in on so far a little known secret that November 26th, which also happens to be a Tuesday, we're gonna excitedly get into tradition 11, and you're all invited to attend.
I thought you were gonna talk about November or December 24th when the Packers play the Seahawks. Or is that the 20? When
Well,
did that-
I wasn't
is
gonna
that
introduce her
December?
to misery
Oh.
this early. No opinion. Hey, there's a lot there.
Side issue.
There probably still is a lot of opinions and controversy about even having meetings like this audio taped and put on a YouTube channel that's you know, it's a Alcoholics and it's a Greater Seattle Intergroup YouTube channel, and I bet it's not hard to find opinions about that. And just like Zoom meetings, I've heard with sponsees and stuff, oh, I can't stand Zoom, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then there's other opinions that Zoom has saved my life. I got, not me, but other people can say I got old and can't go to the meetings, and there's 24 hours a day where I can feel connected. So much good can come from every situation if that's what we want to find. So I've been told. So we usually end with the responsibility prayer.
Mhm.
And it often is started out by who's responsible.
I am responsible.
Responsible when
If
anyone
anywhere
anywhere
reaches
reaches
out
out
for
for help. I
One
want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible.
Go Seahawks.
Go Packers!
Yeah.
That's your opinion.
Thank you.